Well, good evening, everybody. It's a pleasure to be back. George Morgan here at your service. It's PSGL, it's Wednesday night, it's Spain tonight as well. Lots on the table, lots of battling. The title contest is still alive and kicking. And Jack, it's only taken us 10 rounds. We're on the 11th. It's all to play for.
Boromant goes on the inside and takes the lead on the final lap of the race. Now it's side by side between Boromant and Warner, but Boromant's got the inside.
A guest star here in this phenomenal race. Cameron Dowd looking to take P2 in his very first PSGL F1 PC race. Incredible to say the least. You see that Putin still lead. 1.5 seconds. DRS is the name.
Hello everyone, welcome one and all. You join us at PC F4 for season 34 of PSGL, and it's, for one thing, good to be back in the commentary box. I've missed it for a couple weeks, went elsewhere around the world for esports events, and it's good to be back. But I am also joined for the first time this season by a co-com, which is great. Myth, Sky AK, Myth, how are we doing, mate? Welcome to PSGL. I believe it's your first time commentating for us, right?
Yeah, that's true. Well, it's very, very great to be here. Last weekend only really getting into the F1 23 scene, and today I can hop straight into F4 here at PSGL. So I'm very excited to see what the race is going to bring us. We're at race 5 out of 11 races this season, so we're nearly halfway done. Yeah,
so you jump with us right into sort of a critical point, and I guess it's a good time to sort of talk about the standings. First off, a bit of a recap for those that missed it, and also thank you to the absolute legends in the commentary team who covered for the absence in the past couple of weeks. But looking back at Qatar last time out, Losail International Circuit, really annoyed that I missed that one actually. I really wanted to commentate over that track, so a little bit of a shame, but it is, in the end, it's going to be Royal Spragus going to be taking the win very tightly from Dimas alongside Sven Schumacher to close off the podium. Other people to keep an eye on: Lillian down in P6. I know last time we talked about them. They're a bit of a championship pro tag, but we'll check the full standings in a second. Alongside Leo Lund, Cordon, Noel Carmen, and a few others. So like Aleda down in P12, and Jeremy, along with Simone, getting DNFs for that race. So very interesting there. But looking at the drivers' standings, this is where, crucially, all looks to be heating up, because this is what, a 5-way battle for the championship right now? This is crazy.
Yeah, we see within 3 points, 5 drivers. So Lillian and Alexander Dimas shared with 33 points, and on 32 points we find Riyad Sprogas, winner of last race, winner of 2 races in total too. And then we have Milan Meyer and Ivan Santamaria on 30 points. So it's very, very close there. The drivers indeed all sharing the wins there. But it looks like, well, above all, out of no wins, Alexander Dimas has been very, very stable throughout the season, very consistent with a 3rd, 5th, 6th, and then the last race, a 2nd position. So the only spot on the podium that he's still missing is a top stat, and as a win, perhaps one for the books today.
We'll never know. Have to wait and see. But yeah, such a tight concentration of points. We saw 2 wins for Riyad Sprogas now. He's the only driver in this division so far to get 2 wins. It's been fairly evenly spread in terms of podiums, in terms of wins, for all of these top protagonists. They're sort of fighting in their own little bubble right now. So in particular, Lenin had the really strong performance around Bahrain. You had Ivan Santamaria catapulting from a podium in Bahrain to then a win at Silverstone, then to unfortunately P12 in the last race over at Qatar. And then you have Dimas getting a P2, already bolstering some consistent points finishes. So you've got all these sort of different perspectives. You've got, on one hand, the consistent points of Lillian, to getting pretty high points every round, which has technically netted them the top spot. So technically they do, by nature of results and count back, have P1 in this instance, even though they have the same points, versus people like Riyad Sprogas, who has gone from one extreme to the other. They've gone from a initial win at Interlagos to a did not start, so didn't attend Bahrain, to a 15th place in Silverstone, to then another win at Qatar. So I feel like we're going to really sort of see that converge as we get to the second half of the season, which is going to come out on top. So are we going to see more cases of, as it were, lightning in a bottle for these drivers?
Yeah, not to forget either, if we look at the constructor standings to see how the drivers are pairing out there, we see that the Aston Martin team is in the lead there with 45 points in total, 6 ahead of both the McLaren and the Red Bull pairing. The McLaren pairing of Milan Meyer, Leo Lund, and Red Bull pairing of Ben Marples and Alexander Dimas. And we see quite a few of the drivers that we're just talking about, the 5 that are really fighting for the lead in the championship. They're also coming back into the top positions on the constructor standings, of course, but their teammates are also holding up well, and especially looks like the Aston Martin team is really keeping it together nicely and helping each other out there, putting them so far in the lead.
Yeah, so the constructors tends to take a little bit of a backseat with these championships, because even if you are partnered up with other drivers, usually when it comes to the track, everyone's kind of fending for themselves in some manner, which I can fully respect. But at the end of the day, you can get some benefit out of working with your teammates and understanding that, okay, we don't necessarily want to fight. Maybe we can help each other out here. While you can't do things like towing in qualifying, for instance, you can sort of arrange your moves around one another. So if you're in the same team, like the McLarens, I know they've done this quite well, is almost saying to each other, all right, I've got the pace here, if you could let me through, that'd be great. And if the team respects it and they pull off to one side, that means that you can really sort of push forward and get them into the sort of higher brackets. So Aston Martin currently sit at the top step, like you say, with McLaren and Red Bull not too far behind. I'm just curious, the next track we head to for this race, what do you think of Austria? And more importantly, is turn 2 real? That is the question. That is the question everyone loves to ponder upon. Is turn 2 actually a turn? But either way, what do you think of Austria, mate?
Well, I think Austria is a very nice track. So the shortest track on the calendar, lap record, at least in the race, of a 1:5:06, driven by Carlos Sainz back in 2020 when he was still with McLaren. Track's only 4.3 kilometers long, 3 DRS zones, which is quite a lot. So the start-finish straight after turn 1 and after turn 3. We also have quite a few corners with the same name. So turn 2 and 3 share the same name. Same goes for turns 5 and 6 and 7 and 8, sharing the same names. What was interesting to note here as well is that 2 corners are named after former world champions. First corner named after Niki Lauda, and the 9th corner named after Jochen Rindt.
Yes. Well, I'd hazard a guess that this track, almost ironically, despite sort of having a bit of a mix of everything, you've got your sort of sharp right-hand corners, you've got your more flowing downhill turns, and then sharper sections. I'd say that this track is more DRS zone than standard driving, or at least it certainly looks that way. I think if we didn't have tracks like Monza, the quote-unquote temple of speed, I think people will be looking to this track in terms of sort of high-speed thrills, because you've got not only a game of getting ahead of the detection zones in the latter half of the lap for the start-finish straight, but you've also got to juggle that with whether you want to be ahead or behind heading into turns 1, 2, and 3, because there could be a potential to be overtaken. And it's kind of like what we see at Jeddah. You see a few drivers playing a little bit of what I lovingly dubbed DRS chicken. See, like, who's ahead by the time you get to, say, turn 3, because quite often, if you get a DRS overtake, unless you absolutely nail turn 3, then you could very easily lose the position again at the start of the lap.
Yeah, and that helps a lot too with the DRS detection zones. Well, there's 3 zones, as we mentioned, but also 3 detection zones. And I think the most important one is the one just before turn 3, because if you're going to make the move on a long straight up until turn 3, do you really want to be ahead in front of that corner, or do you want to make a late launch so you still get the DRS, or do you just want to slot up real close behind it and then get the DRS as you head into turn 4? So that's something that you definitely have to keep in mind with the DRS here. And yeah, very, very important to use, but we also have to see whether we do have to use it at all, because we saw in the F3 race, it was quite wet during quali, DRS being disabled in most of the qualifying session, and then in the race starting on full wet. So I'm very curious to see what the weather conditions are going to be, because that could play a big part in this race as well.
Yeah, certainly going to play a massive part. I feel like it's not as potent as in Jeddah, where you can immediately get the overtake. Sometimes you can get away with locking the move in heading into turns 2 and 3. It really depends how you nail that corner, I think, because getting a slow exit just basically seals the deal. But if you absolutely nail the corner, if you put your car right where your opponent doesn't want you to be, then even with the DRS, I find that you see a lot of guys maybe going for moves, but they just can't commit to it, because turns 4 and then later 5 and 6, very high risk corners. You really don't want to be alongside someone, as many rearward taps have proven in years gone past in our real life counterpart.
Yeah, and these corners indeed very, very hard to overtake. We saw it last time around. I think it was it Ocon who went for an overtake through turns? I think it was turn 6 or so. Then colliding was with one of the Haas's, or did he go around the outside? I'm not entirely sure, but there was some action over there. Although it's not your standard overtaking zone. The standard overtaking zones would be to turn 1's very risky, but most notably in turns 3 and into turns 4. Those are the main overtaking areas, and indeed at the end of a DRS area. So this is where you'll have to make your moves, and for the rest of the track, well, you just got to make sure that you stay close and get ready for an overtake, because there's no overtaking anywhere else.
Yeah, so you haven't got that many overtaking opportunities on this track, I'd say. Best that you'd be looking for is, I would say, if you're going to think of anywhere to overtake, you do it either coming out of turn 3 or heading down the start-finish straight, because you're not going to get anything unless you're feeling very risky between turns 4 to 9, and turn 10 is usually the setup for said overtake down the start finish. So you've just got to nail your line there. Be careful not to overdo it on the track limits. We're just moments away from getting into the action, folks. Just making sure we've got everyone in and everyone is able to load in with little to no issue. We haven't got many of our runners here today. So, for example, we are not going to be seeing the likes of Lillian. We're not going to be seeing Noel Carmen, hence our change in host to Ryard Sprogis. He's going to be hosting for us today. Andre Molnar also not going to be present, along with Simone Violo, Ben Marples, Cordon, Premick, Ryan Jacobs, and Vincent Nightfist. So we've got a couple of reserves, namely Harry 12 and Kokeni Tamas, who are going to be jumping into the Haas and Mercedes respectively. I will say, great job, and like massive shouts to the reserve drivers who don't always get the love. Obviously they are in reserve roles, so they don't get that opportunity all the time, but trust me, your presence is 1000% appreciated, because if we have, like, say, drivers that can't make it, then the ability to still have a fairly stacked grid, it means a lot, especially for the racing, for everyone at home, and for all the other racers who just want a good fight at the end of the day.
Yeah, it definitely doesn't make it a lot easier, which means that we'll have 15 drivers in total. I'm very curious to see what the reserve drivers can do here today. A lot of the drivers are already going out as we head into Q1. But like you just mentioned, most notably, our Drivers' Championship leader is currently absent. So I think it's fair to say that we'll have a new leader in the championship after this race, whoever that may be.
Yeah, we are definitely going to be seeing a switch in the championship order. That is for sure. Oh, why is that done that? There we go. We will definitely be seeing a switch up in the order. My question, though, is who it will be, because you've got a lot of drivers here who could potentially really move some weight around in terms of the championship and set themselves up for the second half.
We're going to have a look in the meantime as the drivers are heading on their outlet. Looks like Jeremy's on top of the pack. He's in front of the pack, and he'll be going for the first running lap. 3 drivers are still in the pits, with the Red Bull of Alexander Dimas now going out of the pit lane. A Haas and a McLaren still remain there. So Leo Lund and Richard Sprogis are still there. I think we should head right on board with Jeremy and see what he can do over this 4.3 kilometer, 2.7 miles track here in Austria.
Yeah, so we're on board with Jeremy now, and the main things are he's got to be careful of track limits. He's not going to make too many mistakes, especially coming out of turn 10. Track limits are very aggressive around there because it's very easy to gain a lot of time with a little bit of extend. So stewards are not taking that corner in particular lightly. Turns 2 and 3, you see a little bit of a slide, just get the rotation in that ATO4, and even applying a little bit of slide through turn 4 there. It's been certainly a point of contention, as we've mentioned in races prior, how you can almost slide the car a little bit in slower corners to get yourself around just that little bit faster. I'm not sure if there is going to be any sort of discussion, adjustments. We'll of course wait and see, but it's always an interesting topic because technically you are using the most effective tactics available. But here you go, turns 9 and 10. Just as we were talking about it earlier, Jeremy just overextends, just all 4 wheels ever so slightly going over the white line. That is going to call time on their lap. Sven Schumacher instead is going to be the first car to set a time, with Kenny Tamas coming in a few seconds behind. And you've got other drivers flying through now. Cornada backup, 103.5. He's going to be putting himself in 3rd place. A lot of other drivers seem to be finding that same issue of just extending that little bit too much and invalidating typically around turn 10. Nicola Aleda is going to be joining his teammate alongside him on the front row with the first runs here in quali. 103.4, just pipping out Tamas as well.
Yeah, track limits definitely something to look out for here in turns 1 and turn 10, where it's so easy to just overextend. We just see the Williams of Balandelec is not taking the track limits there and going to a very smooth P3 for now. Well done by him. Also, he's not doing so great so far this season. He's got 1 point with a 10th place finish up in round 3, which was on Silverstone. And he's hoping to do a lot better here. And definitely with the P3 so far, he's been doing well. Another thing that the drivers definitely have to watch out here is into turn 4. There are a lot of elevation changes in this track. There's a 65-meter change in elevation. And you see it most notably if you go into turn 4. You're braking while going downhill, so it's very, very easy to overshoot the corner. But the drivers so far haven't had that many issues with that. As we saw in the meantime, Alexander Dimas going to the provisional pole position, going a 10th quicker with a 103.092, currently in first, 13 minutes to go.
Yes, and we're talking a little bit about car control. Yeah, you're right. Turn 4 is particularly precarious, and you don't want to overshoot it. You can also get a little bit of lift-off oversteer if you're not very careful with the car, if you're a little bit too aggressive coming back on the throttle. I know these cars, this new generation, is a lot more stable on throttle than previous iterations, but it doesn't change the fact that these still are driving weapons, and you cannot mistreat them because they will bite back if you do not treat these cars with the proper respect. They can kick back and they will certainly make your job difficult. We see a few drivers who have yet to get a time on the board. One of those drivers being Leo Lund, who we're just going to hop on board with now as they are going to be jumping out here. I think as we looked briefly at the Aston Martin of even Santa Maria, I think it's very important to get a banker lap in, just at these early stages of quali, because it does so much wonder for your mental state. Because that way, at least if you mess up and you don't quite get the run, you can at least say, alright, I may have messed up this run, but I've still got, let's say, a 103.5 in the pocket, so I'm ahead of everyone else who hasn't set a time by default, and I maybe still have a few places. I don't need to stress it too hard.
We see track limits into turn 9 for Lil Lund as well, as he goes fully off the track into turn 10. But as you mentioned, indeed, having that banker lap is so important. We saw in F1 as well, with Sergio Perez getting a couple of track limits and therefore not making it out of Q1 in the races there. So for the drivers here, it's very important to get your first lap on the board. And we see so far 6 drivers unable to set a lap. 5, sorry. So Marek Znamorowski, Jeremy, Richard Sprogis, Leo Lund, and Harry, who have been unable to get a time on the board. The other drivers that have gone a lap on the board are all within 7/10 of a second, so that's fairly close. As we now see most of the drivers heading out of the pits for a second lap. But I think seeing them out, going them out this early, we might see 3 laps in total by the drivers.
No, I think you can squeeze in 4, or at least it'll be very down to the wire if you're going to go for that full 4-pot run. The main thing here is that drivers are using this initial time to either get their banker laps in or find the limits, as Leo Lund did. So clearly, didn't quite judge turns 9 and 10 properly, get those track limits violations, but at least they're out your system now. We're on board with Roald Sprogis, our lobby host, and our first Haas driver. So we're going to see what they can sort of pull out the bag here. They are 3rd in the championship, so they do have a lot riding on this. The main rivalry out here on track tonight is between themselves and Dimas, and they are going to be getting a 3rd position with a 103.212. So it's a very solid run, just slotting themselves ahead of Jeremy, who just said a .268. 3 drivers remained, 2 drivers make that, as Marek comes across with a .321 and puts themselves in P6.
Drivers are coming in very close as we're now almost entering, well, we are within the last 10 minutes of this session. Most of the drivers have now gone out for a second lap or are about to set that second lap. We also have to keep an eye on how many sets of soft tires you do have for this session, because you could run out with the amount of time that you do have to set your laps here. So we might see some runs on used sets of compounds, which we should be able to see as well. And in the meantime, do we have anyone on a flyer? I think I just saw a Ferrari fly by, so it must be Cornet. I think he's on a flyer. He is currently almost 2 tenths up on his own lap. He had a 103.5, might go to 103.3, and he does exactly that. A 103.330, currently slotting in 7th position.
It's a very clean lap there. We're just hopping on board with the other Alfa Romeo, and that's going to be Nicola Aleda. Certainly a driver that I've had the opportunity to sort of watch progress and grow as we have a little bit of chopping and changing up the top of the field. I believe that's Andrew Korapi just setting a 0.364 there. And see, coming across the line here, is Aleda going to get an improvement? Yes, he is, and he's going to be P4 with 0.254. Very clean run, but Dimas not content with a 0.92. It is going to be just 3 milliseconds improvement, but that is still improvement. And it's enough to light up the track purple once again for our Red Bull runner.
Yeah, it just shows how little time there still is to gain for the drivers if you can only gain 0.003 of a second here. But a very good third sector for Nico Aleda was only 0.04 up on his own lap after sector 2 and ending up almost a full 10th quicker than his own lap on his own previous lap in sector 3, making him slot into 4th for now. But with the drivers being so close, I wonder if anyone is going to make a full-on assault on that current time of Alexander Dimas, and perhaps a bigger question, are we going to see a 102?
It's so difficult to call whether there's going to be a 0.2. I think that it is within reach. I'm looking at some of the data here, and it does look like there is time to be gained. Like the sum of best sectors runs to a 2.8, I believe. But that is still begging the question of, can you make it work? Like, it's one thing to say, yes, statistically, we can technically see a 0.2, but the likelihood of that, considering Dimas, at least from what I saw, run a pretty good run in his own right on his first go-round, and to push it again to get just 3 milliseconds, it's going to take perfect conditions for a 0.2, and I think we might start to get to the stage where drivers might just concede, all right, maybe save a set softs, just sort of lock in my position for now.
Yeah, we just saw Milan Meyer go for his flyer, was 300ths down on his own lap, overshooting slightly into turn 3, so he's now aborted this lap. Rather, try and save those tires a little bit and go for a new and fresh run later on. Still have to see Leo Lund and Harry come out with their laps. I think Leo... Oh, he's come out in second, only 7,000 slower than Alexander Dimas. What a flyers he put in.
Yeah, he was just sort of biding his time, coming through, P2. I know he's definitely a driver to throw it in at the last minute, really throw a bit of a wild card in there. Only driver yet to set a time is Harry here. So Leo Lund, 0.096, is going to slot themselves 7 milliseconds behind the Red Bull. And then eyes are on this Haas, who 5 minutes 50 to go. So still has time, but only driver not to be having a time on the board isn't the greatest look. So they're going to surely be setting themselves up. Yes, they are. They're going to be setting themselves up for a full run here. Let's stick on board with them as they go.
Alright, so he's completed an extra warm-up lap as he dives into the Niki Lauda curve here. Very good exit, taking a lot of speed through. Already shifting up into 7th and then finally 8th as he's going to approach the braking zone into turn 3 to Remus. He's 900 slower than his own lap time, which he just aborted now, so that doesn't really say all too much. He's now heading up the 3rd DRS zone. Braking late. Make sure to not overshoot there. We hear the tires squeal a little bit, but that shouldn't be too much of an issue. Doesn't look like he's losing too much time here as he goes into the fast left-handers. Trying to take as much speed through there, not going too close to the track limits. And also here, keeping it clean as we're approaching the final 2 corners. First up, turn 9, Rindt. Tries to take a lot of speed there, just not getting the track limits. Turn 10, keep it clean. He does keep it clean. And how fast is it? How fast is it? It's a P15 with a 103.2.
Hey.
Wait, no, P10.
That's P10. Oh, right, Sprite. Speaking of Haas, almost stealthy while we're keeping an eye on his teammate being the only one left to set a time, is going to pop in with a .021. We are getting dangerously close to the sacred point. It's 102 here, folks. Dangerously close. I wonder if there's going to be anyone. Who would you have your eye on to take the magical .02?
Oh, that'll be very hard to judge. I think with Dimas setting 2 laps that were so close together, it will be very hard for him to perhaps improve a little bit more. Although if he finds one area of the track where he can gain a 10th, then it will already be enough. We saw Leolund go, well, either for, well, do or die move, really. It's either going to get track limits or he's going to go a little bit quicker, so we definitely have to keep an eye on him too. But I think there are a lot of drivers that can potentially break the 102 barrier. As we see people in chat also mention, they predict that the pole lap is going to be a 102.9. But really, if we look at the gaps all the way through, it's not even half a second separating the top step and the bottom step, which is P15, a 103.49, and currently provisional pole, a 103.02. It's very, very close here.
Yeah, it is very close. The real thing that you got to consider is, for these top guys, I know that for a fact if it's going to be anyone, it's either going to be Sprogas, Dimas, or Lund. I'm putting my money there. Purely because they have the top time, so they have nothing to lose by going for those almost full send runs. Like, if they really push it through turns 8, 9, and 10, they can really get a bomber of a lap. They can get that 2.9 because they don't have anything to lose. They've got such good base laps that I think if anyone is going to get it, it's one of those 3. They can just full send.
Yeah, we see most of the drivers now going out with 2:20 left on the clock. Also see Nicola Letta coming in for a late pit stop. He was on the flyer, was 3 tenths down after sector 2, then validated through turns 7 and 8. Through turn 8, actually, that's where he went off. So he's now going to quickly switch and hopefully get another lap on the board. But I think might actually be the last driver to go for a lap here. But most of our drivers are now on track and going to see how much risk can you really take. But the higher up you are, the more risk you can take, because if you do get track limits, you still have that lap time already there. But it'll be very interesting to see who dares to take the most risks, who can get the closest to track limits without exceeding them, and consequently get the top step and get pole position here for the race, and not much later.
To quote a niche British TV show, who dares wins, and we're on board with Tamas here, as we are going to be keeping an eye on them. They did get ahead. They just slipped past Marek in order to get a little bit of clean air. I think the wisest decision, all things considered, you get yourself some clean air, you make sure that you've got all the room you need to breathe, and in Kokeni Tamas's base, that is doubly important because they are off the pace by a fairly significant margin in the context of this field. They're over a 10th behind their teammate, and behind the second slowest time. So if there's any time now that they are going to be getting some improvements, this has to be it. Clean and nicely woven through the traffic here. Got to be a little bit careful, turns 9 and 10 now. Got to be doubly careful that they don't overdo it on the track limits, that they don't run into any traffic. Does look to be keeping it on the straight and narrow as we come across the start-finish line. It is an improvement of 2 tenths exactly. It's going to sort themselves into P11. Marek now coming across the line. Is he going to be getting an improvement himself? Yes, he is, but not enough to jump a position. Sven Schumacher also not getting an improvement themselves. And it looks like Milan Meyer is going to be another one to watch as they're looking very pacey.
He's indeed on the flyer now. Well, he should be, but he's used all of his ERS, so I don't think he'll be able to make a very quick run out of this at the end.
Oh, but Orlando coming across the line. Nope, is not going to be an improvement then. So sorry to cut you off, mate, but the checker flag has fallen, which means it's quick fire time. This is do or die for these drivers. Jeremy's getting an improvement, but it's not enough. He's going to remain in P4. Dimas now coming across the line. Is he going to get it? No. Also a little bit slower than their previous. They got the fastest sector 3, but it's not going to be enough. Koropi now is going to be jumping up to a .265. They are going to be seeing themselves making improvements. Harry Track limits, no go. I'm afraid, my friend, it's been emotional. Marek coming across the line now, and you're going to see no improvement from them either. With Tamas.
Riars is on a flyer now. Purple in sector 2 was 1.5 tenths quicker, so he should be able to go for that 102. It's 102.8. He does it.
No, but he had track limits, so
Oh
unfortunately,
no, the final corner.
he technically could have had it, but it's not going to stick. He's going to get pole position by the looks of things, unless Cornet does some absolute magic. But no, seeing as they're in the grass, I'm going to hazard a guess that that's a bit of a no-go. They have got pole, yes, but I saw that point. I saw that 102.8. It's just a shame they track limits it in the final dying moments. But that is a brilliant performance with Ryard Sprogis, our lobby host, and currently P3 in the championship, is going to be taking our pole position here in Austria.
That was very, very close in the end. Such a shame for the track limits at the end, because he had a purple second sector. It was 143,000, I think, up, and then across the line even quicker. But yeah, if you get track limits, that lap doesn't count. Still does pick up the pole position for the race. He's going to slot up right next to Alexander Dimas on the front row of the grid. And both of these drivers are also fighting for the championship, only 1 point apart, with Dimas having 1 point in favor, being on 33, which is the most points that any driver has, especially now on the grid. Leo Lund slotting in on third with his McLaren, with Jeremy in the AlphaTauri on fourth. And then we have Milan Meyer, currently fourth in the championship, in fifth position.
All right, and with that, folks, very quick load in. I was expecting to run a GT Omega ad. By the way, folks, be sure to enter code PSGL at checkout if you buy any GT Omega products for a healthy discount. But it looks like we are going to be jumping straight into this fairly quickly. So it's looking overcast, which is very interesting. I do wonder if maybe some of these drivers were running more wet setups if they're expecting it to get wet in the race.
Yeah, it's a bit unfortunate. We have no idea on what the weather information is, what information the drivers have gotten there. So I definitely cannot predict the weather for you. We have no weather radar either, which would be very, very cool to have. But I assume the drivers do know a little bit more about this than us. And I wonder if that is going to have any effect here during the race. We're going to see 36 laps in this race today, so half distance. And we should be, well, with the lap times, we should be in for a good 45-minute race. What are your thoughts? Who's going to take it?
Oh, it's tough to call. I think that the rivalry between Dimas and Sprogis is certainly going to be on full display on track today. They're next to each other on the front row. They're key championship protagonists, and I think it's going to be one of those two definitely taking the top. But it's 5 red lights. The track is hot, and immediately we are away, folks. It's time to go racing, and let's jump on board with Dimas here, as they're going to be both having a little bit of a drag race. Oh, Sprogis immediately having a little bit of a slide alongside Leo Lund, who is going to be dropping down also. Dimas is going to be getting an early advantage, but Jeremy is not going to let that one slip by, not without a little bit of drama of their own. And oh, big slide coming there from Milan Meyer. Big kick of the rear. He tried to do the slide trick in turn 3, but the track is just too slippery, and he may have caused a little bit of incidental contact with, I believe that is Sprogis or Sven Schumacher, who just got caught up in that. Either way, they're going to be looking for space, and those two McLarens in particular are looking like they are just fighting for any breathing room, and they're struggling to get it.
The big question is there any damage to one of the drivers here? We see most of the drivers starting on the hard compound, with 3 drivers switching to the medium. So we have Valentin Lekes, Leo Lund, and Jeremy, who are on the medium tire. But what a flyer he's had, starting in 4th position. It's now currently leading the pack.
There's a little bit of contact, I think, there between himself and Sprogis, but he has got past. Ideally, you want to be avoiding contact especially because with the track surface and track conditions like this, it can get very hairy very fast. But I understand the impatience because he's on mediums. Last thing you want to be doing is getting stuck behind someone who's on an inferior compound of tyre and who is going to have a lot longer shelf life than you. So you need to be using the pace of those mediums and getting yourself some clean air. Hopefully his teammate's going to play ball with him as well. But it looks like you're having a little bit of stabilization in the field. It's very quickly evened out with little to no drama. Jeremy has got himself away with about half a second, and I just mentioned the advantage of having the mediums in the early game. He needs to pull out about a second if he wants to dodge DRS detection from Dimas here, because that's the only thing that's going to keep him reeled in.
Yeah, it doesn't look like he's going to have enough. He's about 6/10 ahead as we cross the start-finish line. DRS is now going to be activated. So now we can really see if Alexander Dimas is going to contest here. But does he really want to? Jeremy is not really competitive for him in the standing so far. Jeremy's on 2 points, with himself being on 33. And of course, a different strategy you have here as well. So do you really want to take a lot of risks here?
Yeah, say the amount of risk you want to take is important. We do see Santa Maria going for a little bit of an aggressive move through turn 3. So a little bit of bumping tyres there, and you can see you've got Alekes and Tamas having a bit of a drag race themselves, heading down into turn 4. Even touching a little bit of gravel, couldn't really see from this angle. But either way, Alekes is going to be jumping up into P9, into a points-paying position. And then further down, you have a fairly heated battle between Sly Guy and Aleda. Those two are keeping side by side the entire time.
They're still going at it. Oh,
big slide.
Almost... Oh, they're spun out.
Both spun. So they must have set off a bit of a chain reaction between one another, because both Aleda and Sly Guy are down for the count. And it looks like you had Marek down in P13. So a bit of an issue for them as well occurring at some point.
Yeah, Marek indeed already at the top of the field. Ooh, almost Sly Guy with another spin coming out of turn 1. But we saw that Marek has had some issues in the first lap because it was already 10 seconds behind. We see a spun Haas. That's Harry. Harry spun into turn 3. We see a lot of stuff happening out on the track right now as we're trying to cover what happened there. But yeah, with Nicola and Sly Guy trying to go too wide into turn 9, that really is too much as we see the Haas diving into turn 4, but not really going for it there. I think they've overcooked the tires a little bit.
I think this is where you gotta have a little bit of patience. Yeah, sure, you can have your mistakes, but it's about picking yourself back up, putting yourself back in the right headspace, saying, right, this happened, I need to put it away, I need to let it go, I need to get my composure back if I'm gonna have a chance at getting my positions back. The last thing you want to do as a driver is get in your own head, start raging out, start moulding over what's happened, and that, in that pursuit of trying to get back, almost frustratedly so, is when you start losing more and more positions, making more and more mistakes, and it very quickly snowballs unless you get your head straight.
Yeah, meantime, we saw Jeremy not get the best exit out into turn 3, so let's see if Alexander Dimas is going to make a move, but he's not going to try. He knows that he can play the long game here. Ooh, almost a mistake. This could send him for an overtake, so we head into turn 5. Is it enough, though, for the Red Bull to get past? He swooped around the outside. See, he's got it. He's taken over the lead from Jeremy. Slight mistake from him into turn 4, as I'm just about to say. Alexander Dimas is just going to take it slow, save his tires a little bit, use that DRS, not burn too much fuel either, and then use it later on. But with that mistake, he's now taken over the lead, and now he has to play the game and see what is Jeremy going to do with that DRS. He does have that fresher compound as well. Is he going to line it up after turn 1? Seems to be going for that. Lining up for it right now, getting the DRS. So we head into turn 2 and 3, and I think he's going to go for the overtake.
No, he's going to yield, I think. So this is where these two drivers are going to start playing the long game. I think Dimas executed that mistake perfectly, or executed on that mistake, sorry. He definitely had his wits about him when it came to capitalizing on the move. He had full DRS, or ERS nearly, so he could very quickly sweep by. If he had any challenge, he could just pip a bit of the battery. Luckily, Jeremy has also done a good job saving his battery, so there's not as much of an advantage there. But the big problem comes from the fact that Jeremy, a medium runner, is now behind Dimas on the hard. So running out of time for that AlphaTauri to get past, use that compound advantage, and Dimas could very easily just nuke Jeremy's strategy here by just placing his car in a really awkward spot.
Well, we saw that Jeremy could have gone for a send into turn 3 in the last lap. Let's see if he does want to go for an overtake here. But I think he has a bit of a similar idea as Alexander Dimas had when he was behind. Just take your time, save up a bit, use that DRS, play a bit with the ERS, just not go for the overtake. He could have easily sent it here too, but he's playing the long game. He knows if he stays behind here, he can probably extend his stint by about 1 or 2 laps. And that is going to give him an advantage later on. Because if he's going to be ahead, he's not going to be pulling away. You have this DRS train all the way up until 8th position. You're not going to pull a gap. And at the end, where you really want to make a difference is with the stops, perhaps go for an undercut, try to get the lead there. And if you have fresher tires at the end, it could play dividend there. So already tactics being used very early on at the race. And I think this shows how mature the drivers are as well.
Well, I'm noticing that the drivers are being very conservative with their battery at the front. Almost too conservative, in my opinion, because Dimas and Jeremy have both got practically full batteries. And without getting too much into like macro strategy, micro strategy, every second or every moment you spend at 100% battery, you are wasting energy. So I think they should be a little bit more aggressive on the battery, even if it means they're not necessarily at full capacity. It means they are going to be using every opportunity available to get the juice and get a little bit more of a gap pushed onto the competition. As you can see, Ivan Santamaria is pushing down the field and dropping down into P8. Is going to be losing a position to Elikas. Sprugas himself is going to be shaping up to take a move on Andrew Korapi, potentially. Doesn't quite make it move through turn 4. But we're going to hang on with them for the moment and see what they can make of the second half of this lap. Maybe set themselves up for a P5 heading into lap 9.
Yeah, I was just fighting with Ivan Santamaria in the previous lap, even getting not the best exit out of turn 1, which allowed Balandelekis to go P overtake and take over P7 there, as we're still on board with Riyad Sprugas. I wonder what he's going to try. If he's going to try and mount an overtake here, or if he's going to try and play it slow as well. But seeing that he was fighting earlier on, I think he does want to go for those overtakes. But you do have the DRS train here. Although, you see the driver in 4th pulling out a little bit. I think realizing that he wants to have a little bit of space. I mean, there's no cooling your tires there too much. But most of the drivers, I think, feel happy playing at distance, as we see Marek Znamirovski retiring from the race, so we're down to only 14. Not entirely sure what happened there. We saw him pick up some track limits just previous lap. Of course, having that turn 1 incident, although not entirely clear what happened there. But seeing him drop out of the race now is just a little bit too early, unfortunately.
Yeah, I think when you're the first one to get penalties like that, I think it's sometimes just a call of, right, I'm not in the right space for this. Just bullet time, go to the next round. Of course, you want to finish, and he had the means to finish. I think he should have, but still, he got the second penalty, got a pretty bad start, dropped right down the order, and unfortunately, looks like it's going to be our retiree this time out. So it is going to be down to 14 drivers, and for our remaining ones, we're going to be seeing the majority of them take points, as Corne de Backer
have an overtake.
Is going to be pushing up, along with Sven Schumacher and Milan Meyer going to be taking a bit of a trade. Milan Meyer with a brilliantly executed overtake heading through turn 3.
Yeah, I see Milan Meyer taking over that 3rd position there. We saw last lap he was already pulling out a little bit, trying to make Sven Schumacher a little bit nervous. And he's now gone ahead with that overtake. I think he wants to see how much up ahead the field that he can get now. But it might also mean that the drivers are sort of approaching the end of their stint in mind, though we're still only on lap 10. And I think the hard tires should be able to last quite a bit longer here. Although Jeremy might have to take a pit stop within the next 6 or 7 laps. But I think as soon as he is going to pick up the speed, as soon as he is going to try and mount an attack on Alexander Dimas, I think we'll be happy to keep our eyes on that pit straight.
We'll keep an eye on Milan Maya for the moment, as he's going to have a perfect window from which to look at both his progression, getting closer to the other runners on the field, and the progression between Jeremy trying to get around Dimas before it's too late on those mediums. Ooh, and it looks like we might see another retirement. That is going to be Silly Sly Guy. So 2 retirees now, which kind of confuses me because they were starting to recover, it looked like.
Yeah, I'm not entirely sure what happened there. We do have yellow flags both in Sector 1 and 3 as Richard Sprogus has overtaken Andrew Karapi for 5th position. So Sprogus is trying to get back up in the field as well, though he has to keep an eye on that DRS gaps currently outside the DRS gap as he's approaching the next DRS zone near the start-finish straight. I hope for him that he's going to be close enough, but I think he's just outside that window there, so we'll really have to look into his rear view mirrors here. But what I really like what Milan Meyer is doing here, on the straights, both of the long straights, he's pulling out at the end. He's pulling out a little bit, then going back, creating a little bit of extra space between the drivers, braking a little bit, more safer, as you could say, and thus keeping those tires together nicely. And now he's going to have a pretty good run as Jeremy went just a little bit wide into turn 3, but he's trying to go for the overtake round the outside in turn 4. He'll be able to stick it. We're gonna. I immediately got some Albon and Lewis Hamilton flashbacks there.
It's going to be looking very tight between the two of them. Nail-biting moments here in PCF4 as we stay on board with Milan Maya and we stay on board with the action at the front of the grid. And one thing I am noticing, yeah, as you said, he pulls out when he goes for the brake, both to keep himself safe and if you want a little bit, say, like aerodynamics knowledge as well, you shorten your braking distance by pulling out of the toe because you've got more air pushing against your car. So it is technically a strategy to catch up, shorten your braking distance. Where Jeremy's stuck behind Dimas, Maya can take a slightly different line, get a little bit better braking.
Yeah, he seems to be going for that. He's using a little bit more ERS, and we're going 3 wide into turn 3. But is Milan going to send it? I don't think he wants to. But Jeremy has gone for the overtake, and Dimas drops 2 places in 1 turn there. And I'm not sure, does he have DRS now? He is on DRS, so he could be able to fight back, but he's not going to go for it. I think Jeremy wants to pull a gap now because he's approaching his pit stop window. In the meantime, we also saw Kukeni Thomas and Harry pick up a 3-second time penalty for track limits, both of the reserve drivers. But really have to give a shout out to Kukeni Thomas here, currently running in 10th position, and he's well on his way to score points on his race here. So he's been doing pretty well.
Yeah, it certainly wants to keep an eye on, as they have shown their strength in seasons past and in other races around the community. They've definitely proven themselves to be a solid driver, one worth keeping an eye on. It's why you see, even in F4 and certainly above, you see so many drivers running team tags, because teams are looking at these races and teams are looking at potential talent that could be rising through the ranks. So this is where you get to see a lot of players really sort of find their footing, prove their worth to some of the bigger names in the community as they move up into the likes of F3, F2, and eventually the esports leagues, with F2 and F1 kind of being the breeding ground for esports development drivers, and of course the real deal, the big boys in F1 esports. But either way, top 3 battle still heating and raging on. Jeremy has kind of kept himself safe for the time being, but I feel like he is going to be running into a rubber wall before long, as he is going to be starting to feel the fall off of those mediums. And in fact, he is going to be calling it right now. He's heading into the pits.
Yeah, in the meantime, I'm trying to spectate Ruud's progress a little bit, who's dropped back into 8th position. I think he had a little bit of a mistake there. This lap 3 seconds slower. He's trying to warm up his tires a little bit, but he was right up there in 5th position, and he's now dropped behind Balinda Lekis and Corneta Bakker. So I'm not entirely sure what going for their pit stops, their first.
I
We're
think
going for another outside move into turn 4.
also looking at the field
Can
here.
anyone go 2?
Yep, we've got Sven Schumacher coming through, seemingly out of nowhere. A little bit of a spectator to this whole thing. They've kind of been laying in the wings like a vulture almost. They let Dimas, Meyer, and then Jeremy scrap between themselves. And then they are going to be the ones that... Oh, you can see it dips into the pit lane, but actually crosses back over the white line as he seems to be struggling a little bit with rear end grip. Milan Meyer did look for a move around him, but it didn't quite materialize. But yeah, Sven Schumacher kind of waiting in the wings for this whole thing to blow over between the drivers, and then sort of picking up where they left off and saying, nope, you thought this was back to a simple duel? I beg to differ, my good sir.
Yeah, in the meantime, we also see Andrew Karapi lurking a little bit, trying to slowly work his way up into the reins, as he's now 6 places up from the place where he started. Balanolek is actually 10 places up from where he started, starting in last and now running in 5th, having a really good race so far. We see a couple of drivers lurking around as Alexander Dimas is trying to get his 1 second gap over the number 2, currently about 7/10 ahead. So might not be able to quite do that. But I think it's also going to be very interesting to see what lap times Jeremy can put in, because as soon as these drivers are going to make their pit stop and going to head back onto the track, how far are they going to be behind? And Sven Schumacher is now going for a pit straight. He doesn't want to wait for them.
Yeah, you saw him struggling a little bit for grip on the lap prior, so it's understandable he's going to head into the pits. My question is, what compounds are he going to take himself onto? Because it could be a very risky game to make mediums last the rest of the race, unless he's looking at a 2-stopper. But here we go. Andrew Karapi is going to be sending it against Milan Meyer, making full use of the opportunity given to him, and he's now going to be slotting himself into P2. But can he keep it is the question, because Meyer is going to be immediately making a counter-attack. They're going to have a DRS of their own. This is what we were saying about the DRS chicken. Turn 3, coming out of there, you have to nail it and pray that your opponent doesn't. But here you go. So Milan Meyer is going to be retaking the spot and reasserting themselves in P2, as Corne Bakker and Kokeni Tamas themselves are going to have a little bit of a battle. And in fact, I think a little bit of bump in wheels there, as De Bakker has no choice but to yield down to P5.
Yeah, we see how much of a gap that Jeremy has been able to put. Indeed, while Sven does go for the mediums here, perhaps a little bit earlier, we have a safety car. Oh, this could play a very big part into this race. We see Alexander Dimas just crossing the line. Kokeni Thomas is going to be the first one into the pits during that safety car. This could be huge for him. He might find himself near the top step now.
Yeah, so the safety car's
kind of to get back on track.
He's kind of come in and just rearranged, well, basically everything. So Kokeni Tamas and Corne De Bakker could potentially walk away with a really, really good advantage here if they played their cards
it's just
right.
Behind.
Yeah, so unfortunately for the likes of, say, Dimas, Meyer, and Karapi, they're going to have to go around another loop, but they are definitely going to pit this lap. I think it's stupid to assume otherwise, because purely for the reason of this is the safety car and this is right at the halfway point of the race. So even if you do lose position, the multiple seconds of time, of net race time that you'll save will more than make up for it. Even then, they've got a fairly strong gap to the rest of the field, about 14 seconds.
And it also plays into the medium runners, the guys that started on hards and now switch over to the mediums. You're going to have a few slow laps behind the safety car in your mediums, so you're going to have a bigger opportunity on lasting those tires all the way through the end. And it's going to be curious to see how much of an attack that Sven Schumacher can make up on Jeremy, because I think he's virtually in first, as we now see the top 3 go into the pits. But where are they going to come out? It looks like they're already trying to get out.
That's
back on track.
Is he going to get out ahead? We're on board with Dimas. Is it going to be close? Oh, Jeremy's just going to pip it. He's just going to pip it to the safety car. Dimas is going to be P2. Jeremy's back in it.
I think the luck that the top runners have here is that they don't really lose all too much because of the safety car. They're still in second, third, and fourth now with only Jeremy ahead, but he is on tires and 4 laps older, and of course on that harder compound as well. So I don't think Alexander Dimas is going to be too worried about that. But the interesting thing now is going to be, what is his tactic going to be right after the safety car? Is he going to go for a fast overtake and try and pull a gap? Or is he going to play the long game that he's done before?
Well, I think, if anything, I'd argue in the direction that the leaders have actually gained from the safety car, because they've got roughly the same position. Yes, they don't have the same time gap that they once had, but in effect, they traded the time gap for a pre-pit stop, and now they are going to be starting the next race period with effectively fresh mediums, because all they're going to be wearing in these mediums for on this next lap and a half or so, it's just going to be getting them up to track temps. They're not going to be necessarily pushing them. So they are going to have, in effect, fresh mediums warmed up and ready to go for the next period of this race. If they could eke it out, they might even have a chance at making this a very pacey one-stopper. And this could put Jeremy in potential trouble too.
Yeah, and in the meantime, we see Leo Lund go for his second pit stop. I think realizing that he's not going to be able to last those mediums till the end of the race. So the safety car definitely not playing dividends to him. Although the safety car hasn't been too great for Jeremy either. It would have had about a 3 to 4 second lead over Alexander Dimas to try and keep on those hard compounds. And of course now, with the field restarting behind the safety car in a bit, he won't have that gap anymore. Leo Lund actually going for the soft compound for the last 16 laps. An interesting strategy here. But I think one of the drivers that can be quite happy with the safety car as well is Riyad Sproges, because after making a couple mistakes, dropping back quite a bit, he's now still going to be in contention, perhaps to make up some positions there, because otherwise he would have had no chance to get anywhere near the top 7 or top 8. And now, with that safety car, he does have that opportunity again. But we see some new names up higher in the field. Kukeni Thomas currently in 6th position. Of course, going to drop back a little bit because of those track limits. As we see, the safety car is coming in for this lap now. So we're going to prepare for the race to be resumed. And yeah, like I said, I'm really, really interested to see what Alexander Dimas and Milan Meyer are going to try right at that start. Are they going to go for an early overtake, or are they going to play the long game?
Well, I think that Jeremy has the control here, so he's going to basically have to rely on his instinct of whatever he would do in this position, do the opposite, because you want to catch your opponent off guard here. He could go early, he could go late, he could very much be looking to push, and now is the time to push. He doesn't quite get the jump, but he is going to get a significant gap. We are back up to race pace. We are at lap 21 of 36. 15 effective laps to go, folks. And Dimas is back hot on that AlphaTauri's tail. He may have got a good jump, but Dimas is having absolutely none of it, as even without the DRS, that Red Bull is going to be absolutely surging by, heading through turn 2, locking the inside of turn 3, making sure that even without the DRS, and now with their opponent not having it either, they are going to be pressing their advantage with those fresh mediums right out of the gate. Brilliant job there.
Yeah, definitely not caught him sleeping there. Jeremy did go right on the power at a good moment just after turn 9, so around turn 9 is probably the area where you want to try and catch your opponent's off guard. So he did that well, but couldn't surprise Alexander Dimas, and with him having such a great exit out of turn 1, has now taken over the lead. And because it's going to take a little while until DRS is going to come back into play, Alexander Dimas might be able to get himself a 1 second lead and thus help him for the rest of the race. Look at that, he's burned so much energy already. He was up 100% when we were behind the safety car, and he's now back to only 33, and he's still using more and more. It really shows that he wants to build that gap as soon as possible, and he's getting very close to it. It's already 9/10.
Yeah, he needs that gap, because once DRS is enabled, he knows that he is going to be sitting on a ticking time bomb unless he's out of that second range. So 100% battery, put it all towards this, burn it right down to the edge. Just get yourself out of that danger zone. No matter what you do, you have to get out of that danger zone, because if you are going to get the receiving end of DRS, then you can effectively earn about 5%, I'd say even 10% battery a lap, just by the pace differential alone, which Dimas will have to burn to counter.
In the meantime, Dimas has caught that gap as well, and in the back we see Rear Progress making up quite some positions. Now jump from 10th up into 8th already. Also be using a lot of that ERS, as now DRS has been re-enabled. We definitely have to keep an eye on him, because I think he will try to go for an overtake onto Cornet de Bakker in his Ferrari, although not getting a better exit than Cornet there, as Milian Meyer has gone with the overtake onto Jeremy, and so has Andrew Karapi. A lot of position changes up on front. It looks like DRS already interesting, as Cornet goes very wide. Richard Sprog is touching him a little bit, but with that DRS there and the better exit, he might be able to get that overtake sorted and thus make it 3 positions gained over the course of 1.5 laps. But is he going to be able to make it stick? He does! He gets back into 7th, and virtually 6th even, because of that penalty for Kenny Thomas.
Santa Maria is going to be a driver who loses out in all of this chaos, as they are going to be dropping down to the bottom of the field, getting involved in a little bit of an incident. I'm not sure if Stewart's going to be revolving or investigating that one. Driver I'm looking at right now, Leo Lund, purely on the fact that he's gone with a very interesting strategy on the softs. He's certainly going to have to pit in for another compound. That is for sure. Those things will not last. But is he going for something like fastest lap, do a little bit of damage control maybe, and just sort of net that single point, which could make a bit of a championship swing? I don't know. It's a very bizarre strategy. They were already on mediums. They could have easily taken another set and taken it to the end.
I don't think that's what he wants to do. I think he's going to try and pull it to the end, because you do have the DRS here, and if you are within that DRS train, it's still going to be very, very difficult for the people behind you to overtake you. And he's already made up a ton of positions on the soft tire. So I think he just wants to make up as many positions as he can early on, try and get to about perhaps 6th or 7th position, and then hopefully last on to a couple of points near the end. Because if he does have to go in again, and he's going to end up pointless.
Yeah, and that's kind of the concern and why I question the softer compound call. It's that those tyres, they are very fast, yes, and he's done really well to make up those positions, sive his way through the field. But his luck is going to run out at some point. And when that luck runs out, even with DRS, you are going to feel that fall off hard. So I wonder if that's a little bit of a misfire on Lund's part. Because for all of the positions he's made up, he's going to lose them potentially again. Keeping an eye on...
But is he really? He's going to go for 2?
Yes.
This is way too tight with the Ferrari, but it's going to make it stick. He is side by side as they head towards turn 3. He's now just behind the Ferrari of Cornet. He wants to dive around the inside, but Cornet is covering that up beautifully. His World's Progress has dropped back 2 positions. They were now in 8th position, and I don't think he's quite done with the overtake there.
Say on the back of the backer here, as Lund is certainly going to continue to push and again press that advantage as soon as they can. Cannot afford to make any mistakes here, otherwise he knows full well that it could be game over at this stage. We did see a little bit of battle earlier, as Tamas is going to be getting themselves around Jeremy. Elikas is going to be getting himself a 3-second penalty for track limits, and it looks like Leo Lund, despite all that pace, might start to be feeling the soft fall-off.
In the meantime, we also see how much of an impact it has to be running on the hards now. Jeremy has dropped back all the way to 6th position, and he seems to be more or less a sitting duck here. Does not have DRS. Cornet behind him does have that DRS, so I think he'll be going for an offensive move here down into turn 4, and he has indeed gone by. Does go a little bit wide, allowing Jeremy to get back. He will still be on that inside line, and I don't think Cornet is going to give that up, and he indeed won. So Jeremy is going to struggle a lot here during the rest of the race. Brigard Sprogis still in 9th position, seems to be a little bit stuck here, but I think the most interesting story here, Mila Meyer has now been overtaken by Andrew Karapi. As I was saying, he is slowly inching closer towards Alexander Dimas. It's like a snail slowly taking bites away of that. and trying to get closer. But now Andrew Karapi has picked up the speed, and he's within DRS range of Alexander Divas, our race leader.
Yeah, I think slow and steady has kind of had its day. And Karapi was saying, right, you know what? You're not making that gap. It's my turn now. So pushes his way up, coming up through turn 2, turn 3. And you see Leo Lund going for a massive rush, massive lunge through turn 3. And Sproges even making a little bit of contact. You just saw a little bit in the background. With Corne de Baca there, as everyone is all of a sudden trying to go through positions. It's going to be 3 wide. Leo Lund's kind of stuck in the middle of it, and he's going to have no choice but to yield. He's going to try and get a little bit of a switchback coming through here. A big twitch there from Sproges. Again, 3 wide through this second sector. They're just about keeping it together. Lund has no choice but to go into the gravel, as I believe that was Jeremy having a massive, massive wiggle on the steering there. So in all of that, in the middle of the pack, Corne's not done. Lund is out for revenge, I have no doubt in my mind. And Jeremy and Sproges are at the top, winning this little mini battle. You can see on board here, Corne de Baca is going to be peeking his head around the inside, looking for options, maybe trying a little bit play a game of spooks with his opponents. Leo Lund is going to be continuing to push. He might have a little bit of underfloor damage from that hop, skip and jump across the gravel, but he hasn't got time to think about that now. He's got no ERS. He's got no other option than to fight, and to fight like hell. Looking up ahead, Jeremy and Corne with a massive drag race battle. It is going to be looking like Jeremy who loses out in the end. Everyone's burnt their battery. There's nowhere else that they can go with this. And even as you can see, Jeremy with a big slide from the rear is kind of running out of steam. I think all of them kind of are running out of steam. They put everything into that fight, and it just, someone had to give.
There was indeed no space at all for Leo Lund there, as they went 3 wide into that corner. Pretty much impossible to go there indeed, and as we saw with the McLaren going across the gravel. Thankfully he didn't spin out or lose too much time, but he did drop a couple of positions, and that does make his strategy a whole lot more different because he's running on the sauce. I think this has pretty much stole his advance. In the meantime, the biggest profiter out of this is Robert Sproges, who's gone back up until 6th. He's 3.5 seconds behind Kokeni Thomas. After penalties applied, he will be in 5th, and I think that looks to be round about the most that he can make out of this race so far, as we see Leo Lund trying to get an overtake back done onto Jeremy. Are going side by side into turn 4. Is he going to be doing the same thing as Corne was in the last lap? It looks like he's just quite there. And with that last bit of ERS that he has left, he can cover him into turn 5. And it looks like he's got that overtake down. But a lot of action happening around positions 6, 7, 8, and 9. And it seems to have cooled down a little bit. And I think we have to move back up into the front because Andrew Karapi has closed down the gap to only 0.4 of a second up into the race leader.
This is what we were saying about having the DRS is going to be so crucial for netting that time back. Dimas put everything into getting that second plus, and that did help him for a while, but it looks like he's kind of on the ropes as he's running on limited batteries, having to use little spurts of it here and there just to fend off the Mercedes who is chasing down behind. And you can see that this sort of top 3 pack, they're a lot closer than you think, certainly a lot closer than when they were checking up about, say, lap 24, I'd say, when DRS was starting to make its presence really felt across the track.
The main idea here is now how much ERS can you save and how close can you stay, because Andrew Karapi, I think, is in the hot seat right now. He knows that he can stay close. He has about a 20% ERS advantage over Alexander Divas, so 20% more than he has. Milan Meyer has about the same ERS as him, but they're both within the ERS range easily. They can just ease it out, and as we head into the final 5 laps, try and prepare for an overtake in not too long, and try and maybe even take the first place in the final lap.
Here's why. If I was in Karapi's position, I'd use my position with the DRS to put a little bit of pressure on Dimas, but I'd otherwise use it to save energy. That way, by the end of the race, by, say, the penultimate lap, I'll have charged a good chunk of my battery. I'll have a really high amount of pressure built up on Dimas by that point, so I can force the advantage if I have to, because they're going to be spooked out their minds, practically quivering by the time we get to lap 35. And then use the ERS and the DRS to both seal the deal and to make sure that he's got no resources for a means of a counterattack. So if you want to lock in, I'd say that's the best strategy you can do. Milan Mayer does pose a little bit of a wild card in this ordeal because he very much can do the same. And like Karapi to Dimas, Mayer can close the gap to Karapi if he's not careful. That McLaren's very much keeping him honest.
He'll have to look out for his rear view mirrors. I think more for the following couple of laps, but I think what's going to be super important here is who gets the best exit from turn 1. We have another safety car all the way at the end. What happens? I think it's even Santa Maria.
That is going to be Harry. I think Harry crashed out at the start-finish line. So I thought they went for a pit retirement because I saw the little white dot of the Haas. Unfortunately, we didn't get a POV of it, but that is going to be another safety car coming out for a car that I assume crashed out right at the start-finish straight. Very bizarre.
And now the big question also is, how long is that safety car going to stay? How many more racing laps are we going to get?
Oh,
maybe 1, maybe 2.
We're going to get 2. The game is...
But no DRS. No DRS.
Yeah, so they're not going to have any DRS. The game is hard-coded, though, so we'll get the safety car in, I believe, on lap 34, regardless of what happens. So we'll have at least 2 laps of race running, regardless of the situation.
What?
And it looks
Alexander
like...
Dimas is going in.
And so is Karapi. This is... I don't know what they're doing.
Why?
Why not stay out? You've thrown away track position. The softs are not going to be enough. These softs are not going to be enough, I don't think. I think that might have been a big strategic blunder unless they've got a real ace up their sleeve.
I think they're very, very fortunate that so many other drivers are going into the pits. So Alexander Dimas and Andrew Karapi are still going to be in 4th and 5th position. So with 2 laps to go, they perhaps could mount some overtakes there because Milan Mayer, Kakani Thomas, and Bert Sproges are on 14, 15, and 15 laps all tires. But they're giving up track position in order to fight back. So maybe they were afraid of what the runners behind them were going to do. But I'm pretty sure if Alexander Dimas hadn't gone in, I think a lot of other drivers wouldn't have gone in either. So an interesting tactical decision, but we'll have to see how it plays out. He's definitely going to make the race more interesting for him. And that ERS disadvantage that he did have currently is not an issue anymore. He's charged the battery all the way back up. But maybe in the end this does work out for Alexander Dimas a little bit better because he would have been a sitting duck at the end now. And this time around, he's going to be on the charge. But he'll have to overtake 3 cars over the span of 2 laps without DRS. Although the softer tires might help him out here, but definitely risky.
It's certainly high risk, high reward. I think this whole strategy predicated on the fact that a lot of other drivers were also going to jump in for the softs. Luckily, that was the case. That's why I was initially so freaking out, questioning whether this was going to be a viable move or not. Because if you only had, say, these sort of top runners going in, then what's the point? But it really does look like you're going to see not much in the way of challenge for these top runners because they're going to have practically fresh softs. And with this strategy, it has really played into their hands because in the case of Dimas, full battery, fresh softs, effectively 2 drivers. Because Tamas is kind of out of the game with his penalties. He's not really a factor, but he still needs to get past him in order to get past Mayer. Question is, how hard are they going to defend those top 3? Or how much can they defend on now 16 lap-old mediums?
And because of this strategy, even Santa Maria also going in for the pit stop. Although we also saw Valendelakis go for yet another stop. And I'm pretty sure he stopped in the previous lap too. So I'm not entirely sure what happened there. Maybe he picked up some damage that he went for fresher tires yet again. But yeah, they were pretty much forced to go in for another pit stop because they would have been sitting ducks and definitely outside the points. Now they'll have to fight from outside the points to hopefully get a couple points back. But we're going to see some very, very intense fighting for the final 2 laps of the race. I'm excited for this. I'm all for it. Let him loose. Let him loose.
Let them loose, let them wild. So we've got a tale of two races right now, folks. We have got, in the yellow corner, we've got Maya, Tamas, and Sprogis. The top three, they stuck to their guns, but everyone else went onto the softs. So the red corner leading the charge, you've got Dimas, who is going to have effectively 2 laps to get 3 positions up on ailing medium tyres. We're on board with Maya as he's going to be setting off, just coming through turn 9. Risky spot to get on the throttle right in the middle of the corner, but it's worked out in his favour. He is going to get a good run. He needs to get this absolutely perfect, as you can already see that Alexander Dimas is looking to be aggressive, and he is out for blood. He's already past Sprogis. He's already pushing round. Sprogis, in fact, going to be losing a couple positions. I think having a bit of a rough turn 1 there. Look at this absolute weapon go. It's already right at the back of Tamas and Maya. This is crazy.
Yeah, we saw Alexander Dimas go for a charge into turn 1, just slightly touching Gert Sprogis there, and that slight touch did cost him a couple of positions here, but Dimas so close to the Mercedes of Kenny Thomas. Is he going to go for the inside here? He does have the fresher tires. He has that bit of gut there, and he is already back into second. Only Milan Meyer had, and it looks like his tactics are going to play off. Look at how much more speed he has. He's almost ready to go for the overtake into turn 9, but he knows he can just stay behind a little bit. Look how much speed he has. He has so much more grip. And is he going to go for it already? I think he's saving his ERS a little bit. He is saving his ERS a little bit, and I think he wants to line up.
Don't do it yet. This is where we see it. Okay, you wait for it. It's out of turn 1. He's in the safe zone. Now we push. Turn 2 alongside. Waiting just enough to get in that DRS detection. And he's put that pressure on. So this is where the magic really happens. This sort of latter section of the track. He is going to be pushing with all of his might. All of his ERS is going to be put into this move. Can he do it? He's on the inside. He's got turn 4. I think he's got it. I think he just might have it. Karapi's going to be pushing through as well. Milan Meyer, he defended with every inch of his power. Leo Lund also in the mix. Massive recovery from their earlier issues. But this is going to be Milan Meyer in third. Andrew Karapi in second. And then as we come across the line, it's going to be Alexander Dimas making the most of the opportunity, really bringing it home and winning the Austrian Grand Prix in PSGL F4. What an electric final couple laps.
That was such a great fight going into the final lap, and indeed, Milan Meyer defending just a little bit too much into turn 4, went very deep, and with not getting enough traction there, allowed Karapi to go by and take that second position. But I think one driver that we really saw fall away was Richard Sprogis. He was in third position, but I think he finished all the way at the back of the field, so I'm not entirely sure what happened there, but he definitely plummeted at the end of the race there.
He ended up getting involved in an incident with, I believe it was a ladder, but we'll have to, of course, fact check that when we get to the standings. But either way, coming to the podium, and we can see our top 3 drivers in full. Alexander Dimas with an immense performance. Very high-risk strategy call at the very end, but it worked out perfectly in his favour alongside Karapi and Maya. Maya really sort of put in the work there. He fought within an inch of his life, and he managed to get a P3. So, great job there by him.
Yeah, but look at that. Andrew Karapi starting in 10th position and finishing in 2nd place. What a massive race he has had. Yeah, the late strategy onto the soft seemed to work out. Leo Lund also with a great recovery drive after being so far at the back. Yeah, I think it's more than clear that Alexander Dimas is the biggest winner of this weekend. He's going to take home 16 points with his closest competitor, Milan Meyer, scoring 10 points. So he's going to pull away a 8-point lead now in the standings, which is half of the points that you can get in the race weekend. So Alexander Dimas is now starting to lead a bit comfortably. Perhaps not comfortably, but definitely taking a big bite out of that lead. And now, sits ahead comfortably.
Yeah, so that was certainly something. I mean, I absolutely loved the racing we saw out on track today. Like, from start to finish, even from the start of it being slightly overcast, we kind of didn't really know what we were expecting going in. I unfortunately didn't have my telemetry tools available with me today, or I could have told everyone, but either way, that kind of worked out for the better, because that meant the less data we had, the more unexpected some of the moves we saw were. And first off, brilliant performance to everyone out on track today. Whether you retired, whether you're in the mid-pack, whether you're the likes of Dimas, Karapi and Maya, who took it to the end and took it to the podium. Everyone did a great job out there today. It was going to be, I believe, that Sven Schumacher getting involved in an incident with Sprogis. And with all of that being said, I think we owe it to talk to a couple of the drivers, shall we?
Yeah, it's. I'm curious to see what more will be in stock. But I think what's also interesting to note is that because of the great finishes for the McLaren team, I think they're going to take over the constructor standing. So with Alexander Dimas in the Red Bull being ahead in the Drivers' Championship, it looks like McLaren is going to take over that lead from Aston Martin in the constructor standings.
Yeah, of course. Well, remember, all the results today are provisional, so we may see the stewards getting involved. We may see a couple penalty points and penalties handed out, depending on some of the incidents out on track. I know we had a little close brush moments between some of our drivers. We'll, of course, have to wait and see till the stewards report and what comes of it then. But I think it's only fair we talk with none other than our winner for today's race, Alexander Dimas. First off, welcome to the commentary box. Good to see you again. Been a little while. And congratulations. How are you feeling today, my friend?
Really good. Everything went as planned in the race, not in the quali. But I gambled it on the last lap with the softs, so I'm happy that people followed me, because else I would have been fucked, really. So yeah.
I was actually going to bring that up, because that was obviously a very high-risk strategy. You more or less had track position. So I was initially questioning what went into the call to jump onto the softs for those last few laps. Was it like a spur of the moment decision? Like,
no, I was on my own this week. Next week I have an engineer alongside me again. But I thought, like, the mediums are like dead, so I might want to go for softs and overtake them on the 2 last laps, because I know the safety car won't go to lap 35, so they will go to 34, which means 3 laps, 2 laps on softs. And softs are way better than all mediums, as you could see, I think, also. So yeah.
It certainly worked out. Like, did you sort of come into today planning a win, obviously with a couple of your sort of main rivals in the championship being absent this week? What was your sort of goal getting in? Would you say you're happy with how today went?
Yeah, I'm pretty happy with the win. My goals every week is a win, of course. But the race matters the most, not the quali. So I was happy that in the race I could fight back. Also pulling out of the DRS and then being a bit slow against Korapi, I think, and then falling back again. But the safety car helped me out as well with regaining my battery and also pitting to soft. So it was all really good.
Yeah, I noticed you burning a lot of the battery to sort of break that second gap, try and ensure your opponents don't have DRS. Kind of last question from me. You briefly mentioned it earlier, but you said you weren't that happy with quali. Like, what happened there? Because you were saying really good times out the gate. Were you maybe aiming for something more?
Yeah, my third lap wasn't that good. I made a mistake and lost my rear in turn 4, I think. And then I lost like a tenth. So I was pretty fed up with it, and I thought we would focus on the race mainly. And it worked out, so I'm pretty happy with that.
And I guess sort of, well, I lied. Last was the last question, but I have one more. Of course, we're kind of working with some unknowns, but at the halfway point of the season, before round 6 to 11 are fully revealed, how are you feeling about your championship bid?
I don't know, really. I don't really know. People can be really fast on the other track. On the other track, I can be really slow. So I don't know how to feel about the next half, of course. But we will look into that also, us as a team. So yeah, we will see.
Well, it's great to hear from you, Myth. You got any questions for our race winner here?
First of all, proficiat jongen, goed gedaan man.
Hi, thanks, mate.
So yeah, a great race from you indeed. Starting in second, playing a little bit of the waiting game there. Was that the strategy all the way through in the first stint to try and stay behind, save a little bit of tires, and then perhaps go a little bit longer and then having those fresher tires at the end before, of course, the safety car the first safety car kind of ruined that.
It helped us a little bit because Jeremy, I think, yeah, he was on hards and he drove a couple laps on that, and we were just about to pit 2 mediums, so our tires were really fresh, so I didn't need to push that much or something. And the first half before the safety car, just trying to keep my ERS and also use it a bit, because if you save too much, you get too much fuel in your fuel. So yeah.
Was he going to be a threat if there hadn't been any safety cars? Because he probably would have pulled about a 4 or 5 second gap to you. Do you think you've been able to make that up on the mediums at the end?
Yes, because like hards make an amount of 3% per lap for me. So he was like about 5 laps in on hards. 5 times 3 is 15. So I'm on 0% mediums and he's on 50%. So after a couple of laps, I would have catched up and worked together also with the guys behind me. So that would have been nice.
Well, it sounds like you hardly need an engineer, doing all the calculations by yourself. Very impressive.
No, it's not that hard.
All right. Well, for the last question then to round off. So in your first half, you've now had 5 races. You finished first, second, third, fifth, and sixth. So you've been, by far the most consistent driver out on the field. Are you happy with your performance so far?
Yeah, my main goal is just to be consistent, not like P1, DNF, I know P3, DNF, I don't like that. I need to be top 5 or top 6 consistently. And that's my main goal also. And then you can keep up with the main guys for the championship also, so yeah.
All right. Well, I'm very curious to see what is going to be in store, what you have in store for us in the second half. And yeah, once more, congratulations. You've done a great job, and maybe we'll see you back in a couple of weeks, back in the commentary box.
Yeah, thank you. Houdoe.
All right, and there you go, folks. So that's our race winner, Dimas. Unfortunately, we're not going to be able to talk to any of the other racers, but it's good that we've got to talk to him now. Next race, of course, we've had Interlagos. We had the change of race to Bahrain, obviously replacing Las Vegas in round 2. We had Silverstone, we had the Losail International Circuit, and now we've had the Red Bull Ring of Austria. While we don't have all of the other rounds confirmed, I can reveal that next round we are going to be headed to... Mini drum roll. We are headed to Japan. So, Suzuka. What a track. Oh. Mwah. Chef's kiss. Chef's kiss. All I can say to that track. So
definitely one of the more iconic tracks that we have on the calendar. Now driven on Suzuka in the past, also some races being done in Fuji, the Fuji Speedway, but I think Suzuka is such more iconic with the sweeping S's, the 100R, I believe it's called, the iconic attempted overtake between Senna and Prost, and yeah, another race which is prone for wet races. Of course, last year we saw a wet race there too, 2022 F1, and I'm very much looking forward how much of a performance all of our drivers can show there. Definitely a little bit more tricky with the curbs. Sometimes you have to stay away from them a little bit if you don't want to spin, but it's such a nice track to drive, and I think most of our drivers will love it as well.
Well, I'd say it's a track that's steeped in history. It's a track that definitely is like one of the motorsport greats. It's up there with some of the best, and certainly one that I am looking forward to next week on the calendar. So with all of that in mind, and with all of that being said, folks, thank you to the drivers, thank you to the team at PSGL. It's good to be back. Thank you to Myth for joining me in the commentary box now and into the future. Absolute legend. And we will see you next week out in Suzuka. Be sure to check out GT Omega. Use code PSGL for a healthy discount at checkout. We will catch you next time, folks. Stay fast, join the Discord, like the stream, and we will see you next time. Take care.
Desperately trying to hang on. He's got the inside. Up here is through on the left-hand side. Hooks the apex, gets on the power nicely, and that is job done. Jarno Opmeer now to the last couple of corners now. His finest drive, his greatest drive, and he's done it at the Circuit of the Americas. He returns to the top step of the podium. Once again, the GOAT is back. Jarno Opmeer wins the US Grand Prix in a stunning Grand Prix. Started climbing my pole, she got me locked in on cup though. Cocaine in my